Do you want to learn how to make the perfect 4-patch? I know, you're probably thinking, come on, it's a 4-patch. How difficult can this be? Well, you know, it's all about your seams, and sometimes there's more efficient ways to do it than others. And sometimes a ruler can make all the difference. So I'm going to show you the way I like to make my 4-patches. Hi, I'm Wendy J. Haney, and of course, this is my channel. I'm so glad you're here. I love quilting, and I'm so excited to be able to share my love with you because the more quilters in the world, the happier place it will be. Let's get started with this. Okay, well, you can most definitely create 4-patches with 4 fabrics or 2. Today, I'm going to walk you through doing it with 2 fabrics, but the process doesn't change. You're just going to use 4 colors if you want to go the 4-patch method or the 4-color method. So, I love the 4-patch square-up ruler for a couple of reasons. One, I'm not perfect, and also the rulers from Deb Tucker's Studio 180 Designs always includes the measurements on the ruler. So if we were to look at the ruler, boy, I got all sorts of stuff cluttered all over the place here. On the ruler, it gives you the measurements. Okay, you want your finished size square to be 5 inches. That means you need to cut your squares 3 1/4 inches. And this is so that you have enough to trim up. You could cut them 3 1/8 inches, but I don't want to deal with no sticking 1/8 of an inch. So 1/4 of an inch is nice. It's not too much that I feel like I'm wasting fabric, and it gives me that opportunity to trim everything up perfectly when I'm done. So I love that about the rulers. I don't have to worry about the math and going, okay, 5-inch finished means I need 5 1/2 unfinished. So then we have to divide that by 2, blah, 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 to figure out what size squares I need to cut. Generally, for a 5-inch finished square, you'd need a 3-inch square to start with. So then they show you how to square it up. So once you have your blocks all ready to go and you've got your 4-patch done, then this ruler helps you square it up so it's absolutely perfectly done. Okay, the basics of creating a 4-patch. Well, you could easily start with 4 squares of fabric. So the ruler said I needed squares that are 3 1/4 inches, which I have, but I don't know about you, but I don't want to be cutting squares one at a time. And generally, I don't want to be dealing with them one at a time. If I cut my squares one at a time, then what we'd do is we'd put each of them together. And yes, you could chain piece these. And then you'd sew each of these together. Okay, that works. But it's so much easier to do this with strip piecing. So instead, get your colors of fabric and get 2 strips. So we've got, I'm using red and black. So cut strips of fabric and sew them together. So I've got a 3 1/4 inch strip of each. I've sewn them together. And then for this, I've pressed both of them to the black. That's important to, especially when you're working with 2 colors, press them both to the same fabric. Then, what you'll do is you're going to stack them on top of each other, and here is important, fold it over and make sure that, okay, I've got my opposites. This makes it really easy. So then what you can easily do is, first of all, what I like to do is you want to get them together. After, trim off one end and make sure both of your strips are square. And then get your seams to match, get your edges to match, and even things out here. Yeah, you can kind of feel that and get your edges. So you do that, and I'm working with a short strip here. Okay? You know what? Sometimes even when we square up the edge, it's not quite square. So I am going to square up my edge. So I'm actually going to use my seam as my square up there. So I've just trimmed off a little so that my end here is definitely square. And now I want to cut strips 3 1/4 inches. So I'm using my OmniGrid 6-inch ruler, which works perfectly because this piece is now 6 inches wide. I'm working to line my 3-inch line on my seam. My edges should match. And we're going to cut strips. There we go. And we can cut another one. And basically, this is what you do. Whoopsie. And don't let things slide on you. Okay? I'm going to just set that aside. Now, if you'll discover, look, you've got your pairs all ready to go. They're ready to be sewed. So you can then take these to the sewing machine. Now, with that said, I got to nest them back together. You could sew on this side or this side. Yeah, this way, it doesn't matter. But something I discovered recently is if you flip it so the side you're stitching on actually has the seam open on the top, which I'll admit is opposite of what I normally do. Normally, I want that seam down because then I don't have to get anything caught under it. But if you do it this way, your seams kind of nest even better because you're stitching and it's pushing this one into your bottom one and they nest tighter. So that was something cool that I recently discovered. So we're going to do that one and we're going to do this one. And there we go. I sew that, and I'm going to have a 4-patch. But it's going to be bigger than I need it. So now is when the ruler comes in handy. Now I have my 4-patch done. Well, not quite done because we need to do some trimming. The other thing is that once you have your 4-patch done, you can iron the seams, press the seams one direction or another. But when you do that, you get some pretty significant bulk in the middle there. And your quilter, your long armer, will be a lot happier with you if you use the pinwheel technique, which means there's just little stitches right there on the top on both sides that you can take out. You don't even need to do anything. All you need to do is get your fingers here in the middle and just twist them a little. And you're going to get your pinwheel in the middle. And then you finger press that, and then you take that to your iron, and you've got a nice pinwheel. It's nice and flat. Okay, so now we need our ruler. We are doing a 5-inch block, which means this, before we sew it into a quilt, needs to be 5.5 inches. So we go to our ruler, and the cool thing about this ruler is it covers both full inches and half inches. You just need to use, the right side of the ruler. So in this case, we're dealing with a 5-inch finish. So, so I come up here to my ruler, and in here, you're going to see lines. So this line says 5.5 inches. That is your square up line. Here in the middle, you're going to see dots, circles, and they say 5 inches. So you're going to see finished size 4 patches centers. So since we are doing a 5-inch finish block, we're going to look at that 5-inch center circle. Okay? So we're going to find that, and we're going to put it. Having black lines and black fabric was maybe not the smartest thing. So my 5-inch circle is right there in the middle. I want to make sure we've got dotted lines for my seams. We want to make sure those line up. There we go. That looks good. And now we're going to trim. And as you can see, we got about 1/4 inch there. We're trimming. Okay, now you turn it 180 degrees and then find your 5-inch center dot again, but also your 5.5-inch line for your square here is going to be important too, because that should line up exactly with where you cut. That is important to ensure that you actually get a completely square four-patch, not just that your lines match up. Now, they actually should all end up that way anyway, but that's something to keep in mind. Once again, I've got my seam, everything's nice, and I'm going to trim that up. And there we go. We have a perfect 5.5-inch square four-patch that will be 5 inches when we put it into a quilt. And I love this method because it just makes everything so accurate. Other than, now granted, you could use the same concept and do 3.25 inch strips, sew them together, and then use another ruler of sorts to square it up or trim it. But what I've found is when I use, well, where'd it go? My normal rulers, I just don't have it quite correct all the time. I don't set it there right. It's one of those things. With this, I have exactly what I need in one ruler. It tells me the exact size of my fabric strips to cut, and I'm good to go. And I know I'm going to end up with a really, really accurate four-patch when I'm done. So I hope you found that helpful. Give it a try. I love it. I'll have a link below where you can purchase the 4-patch square up ruler also. Take care and have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate it. If you want to make sure you don't miss a single video I published, hit the subscribe button below and then hit the bell icon. And that way you will be notified whenever I publish a new video. But you can also find me over on Facebook, facebook.com/Wendy, the initial J, Haney. Or I have a Facebook group for those of you that love quilting, needlework, books, wine, and wellness. You can find that at facebook.com/groups/lifefulfilled. The name of the group is Life Fulfilled - Quilting, Needlework, Books, Wine, and Wellness. You can also find me over on my website, wendyjhaney.com. I will be doing more blogging over there eventually. As I get more of my videos done, I'll be blogging about those. But also, maybe you see some things that I'm making here and you're going, ooh, wow, I just don't want to make that myself. Well, a lot of those products will end up over there on the website that you can purchase for your friends and family. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I appreciate you watching.